Welcome in. Hail to the podcast brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. We are less than 2 weeks away from Michigan football kicking off. Last episode, we went through the entire depth chart, kind of talked about some position battles, how things are shaking out, some expectations around that, and some camp intel. There is still plenty of camp intel to be found. If you go over to michigan.rivals.com, Josh has posted some as early as today. Nothing too earth-shattering. We didn't want to dedicate a whole episode to that. So we're going to get into season predictions and kind of go through the schedule and players we think are going to perform well, exceed expectations, breakout stars, MVPs, who's going to lead in sacks, interceptions. And then we'll go through the schedule and share our thoughts on how we think Michigan will fare in 2024. And then next week, we can start to sum up fall camp, the intel we have, and obviously look ahead to the season opener against Fresno State. So we've got a lot to get into today with our thoughts and predictions on the Michigan season. Joined as always today by our publisher and insider, Mr. Josh Henschke. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, fellas. How about you?
Can't complain. I probably still would, but
yeah, there's always something to complain about.
Yeah. And we've got him back again. You tell him there's no recruiting talk, and he shows up. Brock Heilig, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. We talked about it last week, but the season keeps creeping up faster and faster. It's crazy. A week from tomorrow, Sharon Moore will be holding a press conference for the game week. It's going to be the game one of the Sharon Moore era next week. So really looking forward to it. Really excited.
I'm sure because of him coaching last year, that's played a role in it too. But I also don't have, like, for a mostly new staff and a new head coach, you'd think there would be a different vibe, and there's really not. And part of that's credit to Moore. A lot of things have felt the same, which is what he said was going to happen. So, all right, those of you joining us live, I can already see the comments going. Make sure you're jumping in there, contributing to the conversation, ask questions as we go. And then, of course, when we're asking, rushing yards and all these different questions, make sure you throw your answers in there as well. If you're not watching us live and you'd like to, make sure you like, subscribe, notification bell. We typically go live with Hail to the podcast Sundays at 7, but we'll obviously have post-game coverage with the season coming up and lots of daily shows from our man Dennis Fithian. So, like I said, lots to get into. Josh is going to tell us about our friend West, our day one homie, and then let's get into it.
Yep, absolutely. As always, this show is sponsored by Wes Romberger at My Perfect Franchise. Would you like to escape corporate America for good? Maybe you'd like to start a business on the side and keep your corporate gig. Wes can help. Wes is a franchise consultant as well as a business owner and can help you find a franchise that fits your skill set, financial requirements, how much time you have to commit, and more. A franchise is a business startup and operations kit perfect for those with general business skills who may not have specific knowledge on starting and running a small business. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. You can reach him by phone at 512-970-7478 or see him on the web at myperfectfranchise.net/aboutwest. Again, that's 512-970-7478. See him on the web at myperfectfranchise.net/aboutwest. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you missed all of the phone numbers and websites, everything is going to be in the description below and also on our website. So thank you, West. And let's get on with it. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. Yes. Dave's Hot Chicken. He can help you. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, we are loved 50, and for a long time since radio, we are very, very lucky to have Dennis on our team. No doubt about that. So,
agreed.
All right. So we're going to make an assumption here. And if you want to have this part in the discussion as well, go right ahead. But at quarterback, while nothing is official, all signs continue to point to this being Alex Orji's job to lose. He's had a strong fall camp. Jack Tuttle has been hindered at times. Davis Warren has been strong, has looked good as a passer. But we're going to go with the assumption right now that this is going to be Alex Orji's team. And again, if you guys have any thoughts or anybody in the comments on a potential platoon or him keeping the job long term or whatever, feel free to share. But I want to start with Alex Orji, passing and rushing. How do you feel, or what kind of numbers do you think Alex Orji is going to put up this season, throwing the ball and then obviously bringing his running ability? Is Michigan going to let him run? Or are they going to lean on him? What kind of yardage output could we see from him this year?
Yeah, it's hard to really kind of put a number on it because we don't really know how things are going to go for Michigan. Obviously, like one day it could be like not necessarily a Penn State game where they run 30 times in a row, but there might be times where Michigan needs to rely on the run more so than the pass to get the job done. And, things kind of really kind of predicate on the game plan. There may be days where they need to throw more than passing, but I guess in a perfect world, and considering what Michigan has been the last couple of years, and I don't expect that much of a deviation from the norm in terms of how they construct their offense. Maybe they open up the passing a little more. Even with that being said, I don't think the numbers should change that drastically. I think if you're thinking maybe, from a passing perspective, if you can get, 2,500, anywhere from between 2,500 to 2,800 yards passing out of Orji, I think that's an excellent year. You can ask, will they break the 3,000 yard passing plateau? But they haven't had a quarterback that's done that in a very long time. So
Shea barely did it.
Right.
Jake Rudock also barely did it. And John Navarre leads the Michigan record book with 3,331 yards. So it's only happened 3 times. JJ was 9 yards short last year, but that was obviously in 15 games too.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and again, it just all depends on how this season's going to go. If they, perform poorly and have to rely on the passing game because they're behind a lot, then those numbers might be inflated. But I guess, in a perfect world, you'd want to hit him. You want to see him hit that 2,500 to 28 plus mark. And then, for rushing, you'd want to see him get over 500 rushing. I mean, I think for me, the sweet spot would probably be anywhere between 500 to 800 yards. I think anything above 800 yards, that's pretty impressive here on the ground. And I just don't know if they're going to run him that much, considering what they have in the in the running back group. Just so much talent there. But I think there's a sweet spot to be had there. And I think, anything over 2,500 yards passing and that 500 to 800 yard rushing marker, if these anywhere in there, I think Michigan will be fine. But obviously the turnover numbers matter too. And I think that's the most important one out of just the stats itself. If you can keep that, the completion percentage low and the interceptions low, or excuse me, the completion percentage high and the interceptions numbers low, then you're going to be looking pretty good. So it's an interesting case study this year into what Orji can be, even if you're talking about the future.
What you think, Brock?
Yeah, I tend to agree with what P. Maximus said there in the comments. I would put the benchmark at like 2,000 yards for Orji passing, assuming he's the starter. Obviously, I don't know if he's really shown that he can go out there and throw for 2,500, 2,800 yards in a season. If you're looking at him throwing 2,000 yards and running for another 500 to 600 or 700, I think that's what Michigan's looking for. I don't think they need a whole lot out of him. I mean, you look at last year, like you guys pointed out, JJ McCarthy didn't even throw for 3,000, and he's the best quarterback in Michigan history. I think a lot of Michigan fans would agree. So you look at Alex Orji, a guy coming in, a third-year player. I don't know. Obviously, JJ was a third-year player last year too, but he was a lot more proven, a higher rated recruit, things like that. So I think Michigan will be happy if Alex Orji can go out there and throw for 2,000 yards and run for run for 500. Throw for 2,000, run for 500. I think is a realistic expectation for Michigan fans.
Yeah, I think I'm in line there. I do think that you're going to see. I know people have looked at the wide receiver room as like, oh man, we've lost Roman, Cornelius, etc. I think Colston Loveland taking another leap, and the yard after catch benefit that this offense is going to lead on is going to help him rack up yards. That said, I think it's probably in the 2,000 range, maybe 2,200. It depends, right? As far as rushing though, I looked this up because I was kind of thinking, all right, well, he's going to run more than JJ, you would think, right? Just because one, I think his instinct's going to be 1 or 2 reads and he's running anyway, right? He's probably not going to stay in the pocket a ton. 2, I think he's going to have more designed run plays this year, right? How many rushing yards do you think JJ McCarthy had last year? Quick guess.
225.
I was gonna say like 400 something.
It's 402.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bang. Did not look that up.
He also had in 1 second. Oh wait, I lied. 402 was in 2022. It was 340 last year.
It's still either way. I mean,
yeah. That said, I mean, if I look at that, then I'm thinking, well, Orji's got to have 600, right? Realistically, and the reason I say that is not because of like crazy high expectations I have of him, but I've said this entire time. If you're going to take the perceived risk of a lower completion percentage, that, and again, it's not just because we haven't seen him throw. We know coming out of high school, his completion was 50%, right? He's improved. He's looked better. They believe in him, right? But there is this perceived thought, which kind of existed with JJ at the start of 22 too. We talked about some risk element with him, and he obviously cleaned up his game and got more accurate. But if you're willing to take on that risk because he can bring this dynamic piece to the offense, you better use it. Yeah. There's nothing I can't stand more than RG3 might be a bad example because he got hurt, but that's the point, right? If you take a running quarterback like that and then he gets hurt and then you're like, okay, you're not allowed to run anymore. Well, then what's the point? Right? Like you got to let him run the ball. So I think it's going to be somewhere around 600. And I do think he'll end up at around 2,000 in passing just because of the way the offense is going to run. I don't think, I mean, if he gets anywhere near the 2,500 mark, that's again in line with JJ without postseason, Chad Henne, like some of the best seasons in Michigan history. They're just not a heavy passing team, right? So let's talk running back. And again, you can include Kalel Mullings, you can include the RB3 conversation in this as well. But Donovan Edwards is getting the chance. He is the bell cow. He is RB1 to start the year, right? And also get involved in the passing game more, hopefully. I mean, he had 30 receptions last year, but again, hopefully some more yards downfield. But where do you think he's going to finish in terms of rushing yards? Again, you know, is he going to be 1,000-yard rusher? Is he going to get crazy into that 1,500 range? Are they going to split the carries too much between this running back room? Where do you think Donovan Edwards ends up?
Yeah, that your last point's kind of where I'm at. You know, I'm not worried that they're like gonna overcomplicate the splitting of the pass, or excuse me, the splitting of the rush attempts, but I do think that will kind of play a factor into how prevalent Donovan Edwards is going to be in this offense. You know, if he's a 20-25 carry guy a game, then yeah, you're probably looking at 1,000-yard rusher because he's pretty much going to be your bell cow at that point. But you know, if that number's lower, and then you know you got Kalel Mullings in the mix, Ben Hall's going to have a lot to say about carries, as well as now Jordan Marshall working his way up. You know, I think the all-purpose yards matter in this stage. I'm kind of with Darren in the comments here. You know, if you finish with over 1,500 all-purpose yards, I think that's a very, very good year for Donovan. You know, however that splits up. You know, I'm leaning more towards, you know, being over 1,000-yard rusher with, you know, 500 total, you know, with receiving yardage mixed in too. But yeah, I think if he gets around that 1,500 all-purpose yard mark, I think he's going to have a very good year. But again, it all comes down to just how I don't want to say reliable, because that's not the right word, but
no, but he wasn't consistent last year.
Yeah,
Let's be honest. It wasn't really until the breakout in the Washington game. I mean, for a lot of the season, he only had like 3 yards a carry.
Right.
So that is kind of the elephant in the room that is lingering over this conversation. We've seen what he can do in previous years, but that is just part of it.
Yeah, it's just there's just so many moving parts when it comes to the running back room right now. That it's really tough to predict. I mean, 1,000 yards seems like it's a very feasible benchmark for Donovan. I mean, just by itself, you know, that feels like a very easy number to hit if he's playing up to where you think he's going to play this year and what the coaches have said about him and you know where his mindset is and all that. But again, yeah, he's going to have to, you know, make it very apparent that he can carry the load for this team and take the reliable carries with multiple guys biting at his heels, very capable of, you know, taking that tough yardage away from him, you know, the 3rd and shorts and things like that. Can Donovan be relied upon, or is that something that, you know, Mullings is just going to end up being? So a lot of variables there that can either add to that number or take away from it. But yeah, I think anything over 1,000 yards from Donovan this year is it would be a very, very good year for him.
I could not agree more with Dave's here there in the comments section. 1,200 all-purpose yards, I think, is right about what you're looking at for Donovan Edwards, in my opinion. I think he'll be right around, maybe a little bit shy of 1,000 rushing yards. It kind of goes back to what we talked about last week with that increased RB3 role of whether it be Jordan Marshall or Ben Hall, whoever it is. Khalil Mullings did not see the ball a whole lot last year just because Khalil Mullings didn't see the ball a whole lot because Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards were so good, mainly Corum. Edwards kind of struggled last year, like you pointed out, Trevor. But that running back 3 role is going to be increased, and I think in turn that's going to lower the amount of touches that Donovan Edwards gets as RB1, and obviously Mullings steps into that second running back spot too. So I do think 1,200 yards. If at the end of the season Donovan Edwards has 1,200 all-purpose yards, I think it's a good year. He talked a little bit about. I was interviewing him about a month ago at this point, and he was talking about how he was a little bit overconfident, maybe not cocky or arrogant, but a little bit overconfident after that strong 2022 finish.
Yeah,
heading into 2023, he was a little bit just overconfident heading into the season, and it obviously didn't turn out the way he would have hoped. And I do think this is going to be a big bounce back year for him. I don't know if they're going to give him 20 to 25 carries a game and really let him be that workhorse back, because they'll mix in Mullings and Marshall and Hall and things like that. But I do think he has the capability of breaking 1,000 rushing yards, and I could see him approaching 1,500, like best case scenario, 1,500 all-purpose yards.
Yeah, I think I'm with Detroit Lions fan here. I think 1,200 is on the low side. If he's at 1,200, I'm concerned about either A, how the offense was, or B, I have to hope someone else had a really huge year.
Yep.
Because receiving the ball, he's got to get 400 or 500 receiving yards this year.
Yeah.
Last year, he had 250 yards receiving on 30 receptions because his average depth of target was so short. Mm-hmm. So they've really – and I do believe he's, you know, to Brock's point, what he was saying, I think he went into last year talking about he's going to be a first-round pick. And, you know, confidence is a good thing, but I think he was so focused on that. And then, I mean, we saw that frustration when he got pulled at that one point. Blake got put in for a touchdown that was very unlike Donovan. And basically, since the Washington game, with how candid he's been about where he's at mentally and physically. I mean, we've seen him. He looks awesome, right? I don't think it would be crazy for him to get 1,000, 1,200 rushing yards, even if he's not getting 25 carries a game, right? He only needs, if he gets 5 yards a carry, 200 carries, that's 1,000 right there. Corum was getting 250 carries over a season. I'm with you, though. I think Mullings is going to get a lot of carries because I think he's ultimately going to prove to be, I don't know if better is the right word, but more consistent on some of the short yardage and some of the early downs. And I wouldn't be shocked if you see a strategy of Mullings kind of wearing the team down and then Edwards coming in as a closer almost, right? I think very similar to what 2022 was with Corum and Edwards, where Mullings could arguably be more like an RB1 and Edwards is the spell guy, but he's still going to get significant carry, significant shot. 1,500 is the number for me. We'll see though, because it will be interesting if not just RB3, but RB4 and a QB cutting into that.
Mm-hmm.
That 1,200 number you're talking about starts to make a lot more sense. So
I mean,
it just depends on usage. We really don't know.
If he doesn't hit those numbers, it doesn't necessarily. It doesn't necessarily mean that Michigan's going to have a bad year either. Too, like there's so many variables, which is a good thing with this offense. It's just a lot of questions that need to be answered early. So, even if Orji doesn't hit these numbers that we've been throwing out, again, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have a bad year. I think, the higher they are, obviously that bodes more often than not, it bodes well, but at the same time, you could have overinflated numbers because you're behind all the time and have to throw and you can't control the run. So, we hear all the time about Michigan wanting to open up the playbook, being more creative in the pass game. I just, at this point, I'll believe it when I see it. I still think their bread and butter is going to be to establish the run and wear you down that way. And I 100% believe that they have that kind of ammo to do that again this year, especially on the offensive line. I think they're really building up some solid depth to be able to do that. So, with that being said, if the running game is working and, there's all this talk about, Kirk Campbell being, I mean, there are ways to be a little more creative with your passing and not deviate too far away from where you've been in the past. But at this point, I'll kind of believe it when I see it in terms of kind of overhauling the passing game. And obviously they're going to work to the strengths of their quarterback. We're assuming it's going to be Orji. So, maybe there'll be more RPO or whatever, some fancy movement pre-snap and all that. So, there's just a lot of variables right now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, having all these variables in unanswered questions. But, I think a lot obviously has to go right for Michigan to have another really, really strong season. And they've got the capabilities to do it. I mean, we haven't even brought up defense. They're going to have a very good defense that will be the great equalizer when it comes down to it. So, should be very interesting to see how it all shakes out here coming up pretty soon.
I just think your team has been, like you said, I don't think a lot's going to change this year. And you've been so successful with the running game, and you had Haskins and you had Corum and you had other guys peppered in there. Donovan Edwards needs to be your best player this year.
Yeah.
And if he's not getting a lot of stats, that's where maybe I'm like, But again, if it's somebody else coming on, whatever. I don't expect to be disappointed in him this year. I think he's got his head in the right space, his body in the right space, etc. So let's talk about the passing game, leading receiver. I have a feeling we're all going to say Colston Loveland, which we can definitely talk about that and what that means for this offense. But I do also want to know true wide receiver who you think's going to lead the way amongst the Mo group, Morris Morgan Moore.
I think it's pretty obvious that Tyler Morris will probably be the leading receiver out of the pure receiver group. But I think when you're asking from a receiver as a whole, I think it's going to be Colston Loveland. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing if your tight end is your leading receiver. I think Loveland is that athletic where you can kind of, shove him out wide or do different things with him to get him involved in the offense. So, just because, it's a tight end, it doesn't necessarily mean that, it's like not, it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, but I'm definitely not sleeping on Tyler Morris this year. I definitely think he's going to have a say about that. If he has a good year, he has a very all Big Ten caliber type of ability this year if all things go right. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but I just think we have not seen what he's about yet, and everyone keeps referring back to that Rose Bowl play with him, and that's everyone's just kind of shrugging that off, that people who reference it like that's Tyler Morris. Like everyone's like, this is Tyler Morris. This is who he is. Just no one's been able to see that yet. So I think, when now that Tyler Morris has kind of a specialized type of role, and this is his position group now, really, I mean, I think he's going to have a really good year. And again, this is not to minimize, a guy like Samaj, even a Morion Walker, even a CJ Charleston. And that's not to say that those guys won't have good years. I just think when you're talking from a key guy perspective, it just would not surprise me at the end of the day if Loveland and Tyler Morris kind of led the way there. And I didn't even mention Marlon Klein either, because Marlon Klein's going to have a lot to say about that too. I mean, he's probably closer to your traditional tight end, or traditional wide receiver than tight end. So, yeah, it's just there's a lot of good there. It's just a lot of questions that need to be answered, and that's the only way that they're going to be answered is to see this play out. And obviously you got to have a quarterback that can get them the ball. That's the most important part. So there's a lot of pieces there, and I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer when it comes to a lead receiver too. I mean, there's so many guys that are capable of taking that role. I think Michigan's in a really good spot.
I was going to say Peyton O'Leary. That would be the wrong answer. But
yeah, probably. But we can't hate on too much.
What do you think, Brock?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Kendrick Bell is going to lead the team in receiving.
Ronnie, who?
Yeah. It's going to be Colston Loveland, and it should be. He's a big body guy, and someone made a comment about how he'll be a big target in the middle of the field, open for Orji to hit him if Orji is the quarterback, of course. But in terms of like actual receivers and receiving yards, I'm torn. I'm really torn between Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan. My gut tells me that it's going to be Samaj Morgan. Honestly, I don't know. They neither of them had great years last year. Morris didn't see the ball a whole lot. I think he had, heading into that Alabama game, only 10 receptions or something before that touchdown. But Samaj Morgan
finished with 13. So
13, yeah. Samaj Morgan impressed a lot of people last year as a true freshman, but I think it's going to be neck and neck. I really do. Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris, those two battling it out. I think they'll both considerably be behind Colston Loveland in terms of receiving yards. I think we could see Loveland go for, what did he have last year, 650 or so?
Pretty close, huh?
I think we could see him go for, I don't know, 750 or 800 out of the
649, Brock. Good guess.
Yeah, wow, around the money.
Well, I could see him going for 800. I don't know if that's crazy to say, but he's going to see an increased role this year. They lose Roman Wilson, and obviously he got a ton of targets last year, but I don't know. I'm really torn between Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan. They might finish tied, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know if people realize how close the top three were last year. In targets, Roman had 67, Loveland had 62, Cornelius had 66. Receptions, Roman 48, Colston 45, Johnson 47. Yards, Roman had 789, and then like you said, Loveland had 649, and then Roman had a huge TD advantage, but he scored so many in the first half of the year. We've talked about Jake Butt being Michigan's best tight end, probably. What Colston Loveland did last year is already comparable to Jake Butt's best year, which was 654 yards, 51 receptions. Again, significantly more games for Loveland, but and that's part of this equation too. If they're playing, 15 games versus 12 or whatever, 13, whatever. That being said, yeah, I think I've been arguing all year. I think Loveland's going to be the leading receiver. I think we've talked about him lining up outside already more than any tight end last year. I think he'll do it more this year. I think they're going to target him deep because you have to. It's just crazy to not go after that weapon again. 235 of those yards came on 7 receptions on deep throws last year. Throw it to him deep more. All offseason, I felt like Samaj was going to be the leading receiver. I'm with you, Brock. I looked at a lot of what he did last year, and again, so much of it was yards after catch, passes behind the line of scrimmage, breaking tackles. Even in his low usage, he led the receivers in broken tackles last year. The staff has talked about Tyler Morris in such a way that I think he's going to be the guy this year. They expect him to fill that Roman void, to be the next kind of Ronnie Bell. I think they'll be neck and neck, though, like Brock said. I think it'll be close. I wouldn't be shocked if one of them has more receptions and one of them has more yards, too. Something like that.
Yeah.
And it's going to depend on the games and the matchups and things like that. But I do think Loveland's going to be the guy, and I'm going to go with Morris out of the receiver group for now, but I don't love that. I'm torn. I do think it could be Morgan too. So, all right. I missed a bunch of comments. Maj is a dog. Yeah.
Yeah, some really good comments today. Appreciate that, fellas. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, I do think just Samaj gets more separation. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be again, we're guessing largely assuming things from previous seasons and what we think will be peppered in this year, but there's a lot of unknown. Kirk Campbell is the OC now, and we've heard some comments that he's made, and we just don't know for sure the usage. Like we've talked about Fred Morris, kind of the X, and Morris is the Z, and then Samaj is still in the slot, but we'll see. Roman's role changed a lot throughout the year last year, less and less slot and more into the Z role, which is why Morris saw less action and Morgan saw more. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, but I mean, that could happen.
Right?
Yeah,
it could be Fred Moore.
It could be a Marion Walker too. Like there are so many guys. There are so many guys that could step into that role. Michigan just needs 1 or 2 of them to really emerge, but it could legitimately be like 3, 4, 5 guys.
And I think this staff is going to, especially early, guys are going to get opportunities, and whoever proves they deserve more or who can be explosive, they're going to get more. Like the position battles will continue through the season in that way. And especially when it comes to Walker, look, they're going to try and feed him in that deep role. He's going to get a couple shots when the play action call comes. Michigan's been good about that in the last couple of years as far as calling play action and calling those deep shots at the right time. They just haven't always connected on them. So if Walker comes out, I keep thinking about Andrew Anthony in 22. I think it was like 19 targets deep and he only caught like 3 of them or so. It was something crazy like that. But anyway, if Walker proves he can be that deep threat, he's going to play. And when it comes to Morris and Morgan, whoever's making the receptions, whoever's getting first downs and fighting for extra yardage, whoever's breaking tackles, getting those yards after the catch, they're going to get more plays. Or whoever just gets in Orji's eyes. Ronnie Bell was really good at that. When JJ scrambled, he found those gaps, and here I am. Right? So,
I mean, you got to have a quarterback that can get him the ball, first of all. I mean, like, that's kind of the big question because, I mean, we're throwing all these numbers at you about Alex Orji and all that stuff, but we really haven't seen him play, so it's really hard to.
I just have to assume we're going to see, when I look at the weapons, which is multiple type. I mean, there's 4 type. We didn't get too deep into this. We talked about it on the last show. There's 4 pass catching tight ends that are going to play this year for sure, possibly more. Like I'm not even going to include Zach Marshall and Tony Elliott or Brady Prieskorn in this. Right now, Loveland, Klein, Max Bredesen, and Jalen Hoffman continues to get talk. And he's been in these clips making plays when they show from scrimmages and practices. And you've got receivers who crossing routes behind the line of scrimmage, whatever. They're really good at short routes. And you've got running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. That's great for a new quarterback who maybe isn't going to be great on the intermediate throws. So I think Orji's going to hit a lot of those short throws, and those guys just got to create with the space they're given. So,
yeah, all right. It's funny. Keegan mentions, what if Klein is wide receiver too? It's like you joke about that, but he's got the athleticism to be that. Obviously he's got to put it all together on the field, and I mean,
that would be
rule it out.
Two tight ends lead the.
Can't rule it out because
that'd be the most Michigan thing ever.
Well, a tight end's been second or third in receiving, I think, for the last 5 or 6 years. So if Loveland is arguably more of a receiver this year because Klein presents that, we even talked about AJ Barner could have racked up receiving stats last year.
Yeah.
And they just didn't really use them that way. So I wouldn't be shocked if Klein's third or fourth or something like that in receiving with all the hype he's been getting. As good as Colston Loveland is, which is really good. Have you heard Colston Loveland talk about Marlon Klein?
Yeah.
He's impressed. He's like, oh, dude, he's an athletic freak. He's crazy, So, all right, let's
real quick, Rashad, because I know you mentioned Jalen Hoffman, and I know we got a comment about this.
Yeah, sorry, I'm all over the place here.
No, you're fine. Rashad, yes, Jalen Hoffman is a tight end. He's a walk-on. I would liken him to the second coming of Max Bredesen. I mean, once Max is gone, that's going to be Jalen Hoffman.
Fullback, H-back role.
That's going to be Hoffman.
Here's the thing, though. He's a better pass catcher.
Yeah.
So Eli Owens, the recruit for the 2025 class, that's who Jalen Hoffman kind of reminds me of in terms of that hybrid utility skill set. He was recruited as a tight end. So he was in the same class as – he's a sophomore, right? Is this his second year or third year?
I think he's a sophomore, yeah. If I remember correctly. Hold on. Keep talking. I'll look it
up.
I'm
trying to remember if he was in the same class as Marshall and Tonielli. I think he was. But either way, we know Michigan, and they love their walk-ons. Yeah, he's a sophomore. Yeah. They love their walk-ons. He had opportunities other schools. He came here to prove himself. He's done it. I think he's going to get chances. It might not be a ton this year, but again, if he capitalizes on the opportunities he gets, he'll get more. I do think you can go ahead and write him in for that fullback role in dark pencil for next year, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his name has been consistent throughout camp, and that obviously speaks to something. That's not just by luck.
Yeah, it started out like we were hearing things from some of the people we talked to, some practice observers, some murmurs, a couple players were like, yeah, he's really whatever. Then the coaches start talking about him when not asked. That's what we always talk about.
That's the big key. That's the
when
key.
I ask you about a guy and you give me the feedback, fine. But when a coach goes out of his way to bring the dude's name up, I think Kasula did that today, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
did that today.
So, there you go. All right, keep it coming. Comments in there. We're going to move to defense, though. I have a feeling we're not going to have a lot of different answers on this one either. But Junior Colson led Michigan in tackles for the last 2 seasons. No one had more tackles in their career during the Harbaugh era than Junior Colson, and he did it at times with a broken foot, 2 or 1.5 broken hands. Pretty remarkable. So, look, you've got dudes up front that are probably going to play more snaps than they did last year. Ernest Hausman is obviously back in a bigger role, and of course, arguably the leader of the hype machine this offseason, Jayshon Barham stepping in for Junior Colson.
Yeah. I mean, it's Jayshon Barham. I'm not going to add much more than that. It's Jayshon Barham's going to be the leading tackler. Next question.
All right, that was easy.
Yeah, I really have nothing more to add. He's 6'3", 248, and he's going to be a missile out there, and I'm excited to watch.
He's as big as Stewart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Crazy.
That's really wild.
2 inches taller too.
Yeah.
Is Stewart only 6'1"?
I think he's 6'1".
Oh, that's crazy. I remember, you hear all this talk about him being undersized, and then you see him in person, and it's like, I mean, I don't want to mess with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but he had 58 tackles in his freshman year. only 37 last year. But we've seen the tape. We know how good Barham can be, and we've talked about a guy's ability getting raised when he's surrounded by other great players on a great defense, right? And the leap he's taken physically, and just the things we've heard all offseason. I'm going to be interested to see if he stays in the mic or he plays a little bit more will, which doesn't mean much because there's 2 inside linebackers, but I think they're probably going to want to blitz Barham more than Houseman. So you might see him maybe get on the side of a tight end more often. I think Barham could have 100 tackles this year. And I would not be shocked. If I had to pick somebody other than Barham just to be contrarian, I mean, Houseman probably.
Yeah.
The other linebacker seems obvious. I think the defensive linemen are going to play more snaps this year, but they're still not going to play enough to compete with the linebackers, and it better not be a safety. If Makari Page is going to get a lot of tackles, but if he's leading the team in tackles, then we got a whole other problem, right? So,
yeah. I know people mentioned Zeke Berry in the comments too. I think that's a good
shout.
That's a good shout. I think it's probably going to be in that order somewhere. Barham, Houseman, Berry. Wherever you want to mix them up, it's going to be those 3. I think those are all pretty good guesses. I mean, even doesn't matter who takes the handle of the leading tackler. I think this defense is going to be very, very good, and it doesn't really matter who leads the program in tackling, honestly.
No, I do think nobody's ever really watched. Yeah, in this defense, Steve's right. Nichols a defect third linebacker at times. They're the third safety at times too. They're a corner. De facto, yeah, I know what you meant. I agree. I do think Barry's gonna be up there for sure. I want to pull it up because I don't even know. Yeah, Colson ended up with 95 last year, which was 30 more than Barrett, who had 65.
That's wild.
And it didn't feel like that, I don't think.
No. That was just kind of the way he operated, though. He was always it was like sneaky the way he did things. He just sneakily racked up stats. But it's just because he was just so good and just so reliable.
And this is where I think you're going to see a difference. He only had 2 tackles for loss, no sacks, where Michael Barrett had 3.5 tackles for loss, and 3 of those were sacks, including the Rose Bowl. Came in like a missile. I think Barham's going to get sent a lot this year. I think you're going to see him rack up tackles for loss, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's a dude that gets 4 or 5 sacks, along with however many tackles. And we've heard about some outlandish comparisons that he's a stronger Devin Bush. He's got the sideline to sideline speed. So could it be someone else? Sure. But at this point, I think we'd all look dumb if we didn't pick Barham, right? So
yeah.
All right. I think we might get some different answers on this one. And that's sacks. Not only do you have 2 starting edge guys, you could make the argument the best pass rusher on this team plays defensive tackle. And we know Wink likes to send blitzes. We just talked about Barham and Houseman probably getting sent more. Don't be shocked if Zeke Berry gets sent as well. Page gets sent as well. I think this could be a year where we see more sacks from the team, right? Kind of like 21 to 22. 22 actually had more sacks, but you didn't have a guy like Hutch or Ajabo. It was spread out throughout the team.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see a lot of sacks this year. I don't know if there's going to be a clear-cut leader, but if there is, I've got a guy in mind. But I want to see what you guys think first.
Man, this is tough. I think just because I have to, because I've been the conductor of the hype train all offseason, I'm going to have to go with Derek Moore. I can't loyal. I got to stay loyal. It's there's so many options that
there really is.
It's almost irrelevant who's going to be the sack leader, because I think there's multiple NFL players on that defensive line, up and down the board. So I'm going with my gut and going with the I'm the conductor of the hype train. I got to stick with Derek. But man, there is some really, really good options there. Again, not a wrong answer there. It's another one of those things where it's outside of the obvious troll selection, there's not a wrong answer to be had.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week, but I'm going to go with Derek Moore too. I've never played a snap of tackle football in my life, so maybe my perception of the edge rusher position is off. But Derek Moore has more height than Josiah Stewart, and I feel like Josiah Stewart is more of a disruptor, and he might generate more pressures by. I think he's been compared to Josh Uche, where he'll just kind of like bull rush the tackle and drive him into the quarterback's lap. I think Derek Moore has a little bit more of an ability to use his length and get around those tackles better, and I think that that might result in him getting more sacks. That's my my casual take as a writer and an observer, and not a football knower by any means, but I do think Derek Moore might have a little bit more of an ability to get around the tackles and generate more sacks than Stewart will.
I think people forget that Josiah Stewart had double-digit sacks as a freshman at Coastal Carolina, and then they put him in some weird, almost Viper-like role in his second year and took him away from the blitz, and then the guy that took his spot had double-digit sacks, so whatever. It took him a little bit to get settled last year. He didn't have his first tackle for loss until Nebraska, and he led the team in sacks from then on. He finished the year with, I think it was, hold on, I don't like lying, 5.5 sacks. The leader, however, and this is what you said makes sense to me as far as Derek Moore on that strong side. But the leader in sacks last year was Jalen Harrell with 7.5, which means 13 sacks came from the weak side of the defense.
This is a damn good point by Pine Tree Social.
That's a great point.
That is a damn fine point. That's it's an excellent point.
And this could help Derek Moore too. I think Mason, and look, I'm not joking. I would not be shocked if Mason Graham led this team in sacks this year.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy, but at worst, him and Grant creating pressure up the middle, either consuming double teams or literally collapsing the pocket, is going to force the quarterback to run into one of Moore or Stewart. So both of them are probably going to rack up opportunity sacks, right? We talked about when I did cut-ups with Toski. Every week it was like, man, Mozzie Smith's not going to get any credit on that play, but he got a sack assist. Right?
Yeah.
That sack happened because of him. So we could see that.
I mean, you can
I
even
don't
make
think there's a wrong answer, but I'm going to stick with Stewart because that's been my guy too.
You can even make a case of some sneaky guy getting in there, like a TJ Guy or Nino Etta, because you got those two guys you're going to rotate in against tired offensive lines.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to take advantage of those opportunities of having just worn down offenses and offensive lines, and just you're going to have fresh legs keep coming in, like not to the level that you were at last year, at least not yet. They could get to that level, but there's always a chance for a sneaky guy to get in there that is taking advantage of these rotational snaps. But if that's the case, I don't know, how it's hard to say. Like if a guy like TJ Guy leads the team in sacks, how does that bode for the rest of the defensive line? I'd almost have to say it would be. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be good or bad, for considering the other guys. But, I mean, we've heard enough hype about those two guys where having them perform well wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. So, there's just so much potential there.
I apologize. Was it Adam that said it? Yeah, Stewart had a ton of pressures and hurries in that second year, but they had him lined up so far away from the center that he was just, again, sack assist. The guy was running out, quarterback was running out, and then the strong side was getting the sack. It's about pressure to sack conversion, right? The leader in pressures last year, again, Harrell with 31, Josiah Stewart had 29.
Yep.
So if there's 60 pressures from the weak side, and I think Stewart's going to play more, and I think he's going to step up, it'd be bigger this year. That's part of the reason he's my pick. But just so you know, tied with Stewart with pressures last year, 29, Mason Graham.
Wow.
just
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable, man.
To answer this question by Seafost, it was I just had it. Where'd it go? It was 40 sacks total last year.
Yep.
So
I picked 50.
I think they could go above 40 easily. I think there's a lot of, especially when you factor in, a scheme of Wink where there's going to be more pressure, there's going to be more blitzing. I think 40 is at least a floor at this point. I think that could be, they could be above, they could go way above that. I don't know what the record is.
Yeah, I'd have to
the total in a year. I'd have to dig for that. But
hey,
there you go. There's a by the numbers for you right there for this week.
Comparing sacks across the previous teams. All right.
Yeah.
Dude, I keep talking myself into Mason Graham here. Steve just asked about QB hits. Mason Graham led the team with 7 QB hits last year.
Yeah.
Stewart with 6, McGregor 5, Moore 4, Harrell 4, Hurries, Mason Graham 18. Ridiculous. So I don't know. But yeah, to your point, TJ Guy did not play a lot last year, 33 pass rush snaps. He had a win rate, led the team 24.2, 5 pressures on only 33 blitzing snaps. So I think there's gonna be a lot of pressure this year. is the point. We'll see. All right.
And TJ Guy is another guy who coaches have really talked up this fall camp. Yeah. Just like Jalen Hoffman. He's getting a lot of hype coming in and
which is good because they're gonna need him. The depth at that edge spot, we've talked about it. So
TJ Guy is indeed a guy.
There it is.
Indeed a guy. Can't confirm he is a guy.
Middle name is Dude.
Yeah, TJ Dude Guy.
All right.
TJ Dude Guy. That's all they need. They just need to call him that from now on. TJ Dude Guy. That's it. There's no shortening that name. It's TJ Dude Guy.
Let's try it. We'll try and go a little quicker here. We've got quite a bit to get through still. So this one's interesting because interception leader. Mike Sainer still last year was 6, I believe, was the leader. Your gut would say Will Johnson, but your gut would also say they're not going to throw it anywhere near him.
Yeah, this
year as well. So this is similar to me where I think you could see more turnovers this year. Look, it all works together. The secondary plays better, more pass rush forces bad throws, more interceptions, blah, blah, blah. I think you could see more interceptions. Interested though, your thoughts on it, if there's going to be a guy that piles up big numbers, or if is Will Johnson so good that even if they don't throw at him much, he's still leading this team in interceptions?
I would love to pick Will Johnson because that's the obvious pick. But again, as you just said, I don't think anyone's going to throw to him. So my pick, it might be a little off the beaten path here, but I think my pick's going to be Zeke Berry, interception leader. The logic says it's probably going to be Jair Hill if he's who we think he is, but we've heard so much of the versatility of Zeke Berry, and he can wear multiple hats. And with that being said, you think that he's going to be all over the field. So that'll be my pick, Zeke Berry. A number, no idea. I cannot predict interception numbers. Those are so hard to predict. But yeah, Zeke Berry.
I'm going with the obvious pick here. I got to go with Will Johnson. I think last year he had 3 and he was banged up. Was it 4? Okay. Yeah. 4. And he was banged up. He's been talking about how he really hasn't.
It's not wrong. It's not wrong.
Hey, when Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are running at you and you got 650 pounds worth of beef right in your lap, you don't know where you're throwing the ball. You lose track of where Will Johnson is on the field.
Yeah. Tommy Boy reference. I'm sorry. I got Zelensky. Must have been watching Tommy Boy. Bringing me back to Brock. Never seen the movie before.
Well, and there's going to be some quarterback that, that totally is not thinking and trusts his arm and is like, oh, I could fit that in there against him. And then totally.
It's not even just that. Will Johnson's going to be guarding the team's best wide receiver.
Yeah.
We saw Kyle McCord twice last year. Force throws in, and Will Johnson jumped the route on the first one. And then I believe Marvin made a business decision on the second one, but that's fine. So, the idea that, Brock, what you were saying, the idea that he said he was never 100% last year.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild to me.
And you're 100% now? Like, whoa.
Yeah. There is an argument there where quarterbacks won't throw at him, but I don't know. I have a feeling he could go for 5, 6, maybe 7. I wouldn't go any higher than 7 though, but he'll rack them up.
Let's get into Charles Woodson territory. Let's get wild here. What did he have? Heisman year, was it 8? Yeah, 8.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. Oh, Charles Woodson was so good. So I don't hate the Zeke Berry pick. Again, 6 picks from the nickel spot for Sainristil last year. Will was second with 4, and then you got a couple guys with 2 and 1 at the safety spot. So it was definitely Mikey and Will last year.
Yeah.
Let me pull up because I'm interested. Yeah, Will was targeted 37 times last year. Josh Wallace 42 and Sainristil 50. I do agree they're not going to target him as much, and they're going to do what they can to try and move players around it to get their best guy open and not have Will on him. But I can't pick against him, especially like Brock said, with him being healthy and knowing how good he was when he wasn't. I also think, and this is not a shot at Josh Wallace. Josh Wallace was really, really good last year. I think Jair Hill is probably going to be better. And he'll be in the pick to get lead in interceptions. It is a bad pick either. But
you'd hope Jair Hill is better than Josh Wallace. I mean, again, that's not a shot at Josh Wallace.
Not at all. Not at all. Joining the team in the summer and what he did, higher. 100%.
Yeah.
I think his ceiling's higher. I think he, a lot of the credit that Josh Wallace gives in terms of why he was good last year was to Mike Sainristil. I mean, that's the hard part, losing him, right? He spent a few weeks with him before the season started, right? Jair Hill has been following Will Johnson. I just read an article about this the other day in the comments he made. Literally, like, how he gets dressed for practice. Every piece of his warm-up routine. He has been watching every little thing Will Johnson does and learning from him for the last year. He took that red shirt in stride last year. So, yeah, I think he's going to be really good. But I don't know. I'm going to go with Will because I just feel crazy not picking him. But, again, just from opportunities, if he wasn't, I wouldn't be shocked. So, all right, that's our stat, people. We're going to talk about our breakout candidates and MVPs. You can use breakout to whatever definition you want. If you want it to be somebody people haven't heard of at all and kind of comes out of nowhere, you could make the argument Tyler Morris going from what he's done to being wide receiver 1 is still a breakout, right? So whatever criteria you want to put on that.
One sec. I want to respond to Steve's comment. You know what the difference between I'm trying to think what year Ty Law was on the team.
94.
Was he on the 97 team?
No.
You know what the difference between all 3 of those guys are and Will? National champion. Yeah, he absolutely belongs. I mean, he's right in there in that discussion. I don't care what Will does this year. He is in that discussion.
That Washington game became kind of not a blowout, but like Michigan put it away at the end and kind of dominated. People forget how clutch Will Johnson's interception was in that game.
Yep. And that was a great freaking play too. That wasn't just like something that fell into his hands. He had to work for that pick too.
He was in Ty Law 95 NFL draft.
Okay,
so, left after 94.
The big difference between those 3 guys and Will is vast when you include a national championship in that mix.
I know we've got to go fast, Trevor. You said that, but really quickly, is there anything Will can do to catch Charles in terms of greatest cornerback in Michigan history? Like is that even a possibility? You guys watched it, I didn't.
Win Heisman. I mean, that would be pretty much it. He's done everything else.
You know, Go ahead.
He's done everything else. He'd have to win a Heisman in order to surpass. I don't know if you can even surpass Charles. Like, I don't think there's surpassing Charles.
Let me put it this way. If Will Johnson had 11 interceptions this year, he'd still be one short of Charles Woodson.
Yeah, that's incredible. Incredible.
Like, Woodson was, and it's always tough because when you're a kid, like, I'm older than these guys now, so it's hard for me to look at them. Like, I can appreciate their talent, but Woodson was bigger than life to me. You know what I mean? Like, this guy right here.
It
wasn't just that he got interceptions; it was how he got them, dude. That Michigan State pick might still be the best play I've ever seen.
I mean, he played offense.
Smoker was throwing the ball away.
He played offense. Right. He ran back kicks. Like,
that's the only reason he won the Heisman.
Yeah,
he had the punt return against Ohio State. He had 20 or 30 receptions or whatever it ended up being that year. But
that's kind of the bad thing when it comes to having the greatest player of all time play in that position group, is that it creates, when you're a good player, it creates that impossible comparison. Like, hey, is this guy as good, or can he be as good as Charles Woodson? I mean, like, that's a different type of stratosphere, type of level of comparison. But Will Johnson's been that good where it's not that outlandish to even compare.
No, I think it's fair.
Yeah.
Like, it's look, he put on the number 2 for a reason. And him and Charles have been like this for a long time. And I mean, obviously his dad's a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
You know what? I was just going to say this, and somebody kind of, sorry. Woodson was MJ.
Jordan Lewis was the man too. He was.
Yeah, Jordan Lewis was.
Antoine is correct.
But Woodson was MJ. He was magical. I think in the same way, Kobe Bryant was never going to be thought of as better than Michael Jordan because he played too much like him. You know what I mean? He was always going to be in his shadow. You had the era where he was dunking and playing like that, and then he moved to the mid-range jumper and the turnaround and more of a shooter game later in his career. They're too similar of players. And look, Kobe talked to Jordan all the time and learned a lot from him as well. I think Will Johnson will eventually, if he has the kind of year we think he's going to have, which is going to be All-American status, which is going to, he's already got the national championship. He's already made big plays in Big Ten championship games and national, whatever. He'll be there in that conversation, but man, to pass Woodson, I just don't. Well, and then we already know too, Woodson went on to be an NFL Hall of Famer too.
Yeah. He backed up in the pros too.
I mean, there's not a lot of guys that I don't even want to try and think right now, but like Heisman, national championship, defensive MVP, Super Bowl champion, NFL Hall of Famer. The dude has done it all, man. He's it.
He's one of very few players that can talk the talk and back it up in the same.
I just smile. I love Charles Woodson so much.
That guy, unique in every sense of the word.
Who's
unicorn?
Who's your guy in that realm, Brock? So I was 12 in 97.
12 years old.
It doesn't have to necessarily be 12, but just the Michigan player you look at, almost larger than life. The dude literally, you couldn't believe the plays he made. You knew he was going to do something every game. It's probably Denard for you, isn't it?
No, it's not. It was actually Jabril.
Oh God, you're so young.
Denard was a little.
You were a baby with Denard. Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Weren't you? You were like 5 or 6.
Jeez.
I don't remember watching much of Denard at all, but Jabril was the one where it was like, wow.
Oh no.
But you know what though? In his defense though, Jabril was it. It was the same vibe.
Yeah.
Every time he was back for a punt, you thought he could house it.
Yep.
Every single time. You had no anxiety that he was going to muff it or anything. He was a threat every single time he was back there to return it. I still remember the sound in the stadium, Oregon State, when the QB lobbed the ball up and Peppers made that hit on the sideline. The crack of the hit and the crowd just going, oh.
Yeah.
So, no. And, hey, Peppers was a Heisman finalist, and I know a lot of rival fans hate that. But to me, like, that's what Heisman always was. It wasn't necessarily just a numbers thing. It was like, how do I tell the story of this season?
Yeah.
What players
into a program and what?
Yeah, it just
football.
just dynamic players, just football players, man.
Yep.
Like that's why. Oh my God, why can't I think of his name? Colorado, Travis Hunter.
Yep.
He's not the best corner. He's not the best wide receiver, but he's really good at both. And that's a college football player, man.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if he got invited to New York this year. I don't know.
You'd be surprised if he did.
I'd be surprised if he didn't.
Yeah, they're gonna.
I don't know if he deserved to be there, but just because of him being so dynamic, it's yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we got to move on.
We're good. We're good. I can talk about it. All right. So again, offensive breakout. However you want to categorize that. Who you got?
Oh boy. Give me Marlon.
Will
Klein.
Johnson at wide receiver.
I know
Marlon Klein's a really good pick.
Yeah. I hope they don't play well on offense. I don't think they don't need.
They don't need to. It's a gimmick, yeah.
And they don't need him in kick returner too. I mean, unless he's some just clear cut, just a stud. I don't think they need him there. But anyways, yeah, Marlon Klein is my pick for offensive breakout.
God, that is a good pick.
That is a good pick. That would probably be who I would go with. But just to be different, I'll throw out running back 3. Whether it's Marshall or Hall. I don't know if they're gonna play one guy significantly more than the other, or if they're gonna kind of mix them in both there at like a 3 and 4, both getting kind of the same amount of carries. But I think we could see some good things from Hall and or Marshall this year.
Yeah. Klein's a good pick. I do wonder if he's going to end up in that AJ Barner trap, though, or maybe he has a couple big games just because it falls in his lap, the opportunity, but doesn't do enough throughout the year to really rack it up. But Klein's a really good pick. I don't know if this is technically what people would think of as a breakout, but we've been talking about Tyler Morris being that Roman Wilson, Ronnie Bell type guy, and he's coming off a year where he only had 13 receptions. If he ends up being looked at in the same way we looked at Roman Wilson and Ronnie Bell, then that's a huge year. And we've talked about it before, but I think people forget he went a long time without playing football. Between what happened with the COVID schedule and the fall being canceled, moved to spring, and then he had an ACL tear, and then he had extra rehab in his freshman year. I think about Braden McGregor, how long it kind of took him to really get to being not only just back to football shape, but also developing into a higher end college player. And Morris with that touchdown against Bama, it was like that, like Josh said, that's Tyler Morris. If they let him do that all the time. But I think I'm going to agree with Brock. And I'm going to be more specific. And I think it's Jordan Marshall. It could be Ben Hall. It could be either one of those two or the two together. I've been on the Ben Hall train for a while, but man, there's just a vibe around Jordan Marshall and his all around talent. And I think he's going to go beyond your typical freshman breakout, and he's going to be a serious contributor on this team. But a lot of easy, good picks there. So
you want my secondary choice? Just
no.
No, Mullings is my choice. My second choice.
Yeah, in the same vein as Morris. I mean, if Mullings goes out there and he gets 1,000 yards, and I know there were some comments earlier too about maybe we're overhyping him a little bit. The dude just gets 5 yards every carry, and they just didn't give him the ball a bunch.
Overhyping Mullings?
Yeah, just like the idea that he could be like 1,000-yard rusher or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
The Haskins comparisons are just so obvious to me. The former linebacker, just again, I think he's going to carve out that early down and short yardage role. But Mullings is a good pick too. Absolutely. It might be tougher on defense. I mean, how good of a year does Mason Graham have to do to be a breakout?
Well, how do you predict a breakout that's already happened? There's so many guys returning that have already broken out.
Right. I mean, the entire front four you can't put in that category. I don't think even Houseman. I mean, leading tackler or whatever. Well, yeah, I don't know that that's in that category. Barham, as much as we've hyped him, this is his third year starting.
Established.
Will Johnson. Right, Makari Page, Quentin Johnson, right? So not a lot of options here, but who you got?
I got one.
Yeah.
Zeke Berry. Zeke Berry is almost by default at this point.
Yeah. Everyone else on the defense is already broken out for the most part. I think Zeke Berry is probably the best pick there at defense. You could make an argument for a guy like Wesley Walker, but yeah, I mean, you typically look at breakouts as more younger guys, and he's a 6th-year senior. So
He played a ton too. Yeah.
yeah, that one's so tough on the defense just because Michigan's so good defensively. Like you look at the starters, you guys pointed out that what 8, 9 of them have already established themselves as like
Yeah.
legitimate Big Ten football players. So that's tough, but I think Zeke Berry's the pick.
I think Zeke Berry's probably the pick as well. Getting plugged into that Mikey role. We know how valuable that is in this defense. But I'm going to go with, we were talking about last year already before Josh Wallace joined the team that I thought Zeke Berry at nickel and Sainer still at the outside corner might be the option. But anyway, a guy that maybe hasn't played much at all that I think is going to be a serious contributor this year. I'm going Eno Etta.
That's a good pick.
I know he's moved inside. I think he's going to rotate, obviously, at defensive tackle. I think they're still going to line him up on the edge at times, though. I think he's going to move all over that defensive line. I don't know. Mike Morris, 2021 is a comparison I've made in the past. He's not going to be as big of a player as Zeke Berry. Zeke Berry is going to be arguably top 4 or 5 most important players on this defense if he's locked into that nickel role. But in the same way, Marshall, I think, will go from early rotations to by the end of the year being a serious contributor. That's what I think Eno Etta is going to be.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. I'm going through the comments here. Like Steve mentioned
TJ Guy,
which is good.
Yeah,
that's a good pick. I think I'd be remiss not to mention Jair Hill as an obvious one too.
Yeah, he's there with Berry. Yep.
That would be right behind Berry.
Yeah, we were talking about he might lead the team in interceptions. That's a breakout year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. There are absolutely candidates. I mean, even you could make an argument for Ernest Hausman too that he can have a breakout year.
Yeah,
he got caught up behind that rotation at linebacker, but
yeah,
he was still really good last year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
he was third in tackles last year.
Yeah, Juju mentioned Cameron Brandt, which is a good pick too.
Brandt is a really good one.
There's depth guys that you could see break out for sure. A starter.
Well, yeah, and you could start to get into the freshmen, a Dominic Nichols, a Cole Sullivan, guys that have been shouted out a ton by the staff this offseason.
My dark horse is Ike Iwunnah.
Great pick.
That is really good. Why didn't I not
great pick?
He's a guy who some coaches have talked up. Lou Esposito talked about him as being one of the guys who's progressed the most since he got there in the spring. So,
yeah, it sounds like, was he the one that they said had conditioning issues in the past and now?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, really good. And he shows up whenever. Look, I never want to make a huge deal about the practice clips that they put out, but when Josh gets intel or I hear whatever, and we're like, hey, that's pretty similar, and then I see a clip from a scrimmage, and that guy's playing with the 1s or 2s and making a play, it's like, okay, there's some confirmation there. Mm-hmm. So Ike's a good pick.
That is really good.
And yeah, I'm with you with Walker because I think Walker's actually going to have a really big year, but he played 600 snaps at Tennessee. So how do you classify that? Brandon Hillman?
Oh, Adam. Rayshon Benny.
Oh, duh.
I didn't even think about that either. That's a really good pick.
People forget about him. He got injured at the end of last year, and people kind of just forgot about him. And he's going to be a stud.
And he was really, really good in run defense when he played last year. Really good. So, yeah, Benny counts. I think Benny's a good pick.
Yeah, Benny absolutely counts.
Jimmy Roller breaking out would be fantastic.
Oh, that would be huge. That would be absolutely huge. He's just got to stay healthy. That's his big thing. He's just got to be healthy.
If he's Hausman from last year, he's 3rd, 4th in tackles.
And the coaches can't put him one-on-one on an athletic tight end and leave him out to dry like that.
That's incredible.
Oh, poor guy. That was
no, I don't. Well, welcome back. Here you go.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, lots of good choices there. Awesome. All right, MVP. Same thing. How do you want to categorize this? Highest impact, most production, most important, whatever that means to you. The most valuable player on offense for Michigan.
Man. Colson Loveland.
It's a good pick.
I feel like it's a cop-out answer, but I mean, I don't know how you cannot.
You're picking an MVP. That's not a cop-out.
Yeah, I don't know how you can not pick him, other than like there's someone else, but
if he does what we were talking about earlier, 50, 60 receptions, 800 yards, double-digit touchdowns. I mean, you're the best season for a tight end in Michigan history at a school that loves tight ends. Yeah, that's not a bad pick at all.
Yep.
Yeah, Calvin is exactly right in the comments. It's either Donovan or Colston, and I really don't see a way where it's anyone else other than those two. I mean, if Alex Orji goes out there and has an incredible season, maybe, but I don't think anyone's banking on that. I think you're looking at the offensive MVP being either Donovan Edwards or Colston Loveland, and I'll go with Donovan just to be different than Josh, but it could easily be either one of them.
Max Bredesen, I love that from Keegan. Absolutely. Hey, I think again, depending on how you look at it, from an instrumental standpoint, that guy's a leader, probably a captain.
Hey, he could be that hammer and panda Khalid Hill role where he just picked up 12 1-yard touchdowns.
Panda.
Oh, Khalid Hill.
Man. I get the Orji argument from a standpoint of Michigan ceiling, and we'll get to this in a second. Michigan ceiling depends on Alex Orji hitting his ceiling, right? Yeah. If he has a Jalen Milroe type ascension, I know that comparison's getting dumb at this point, but after what Harbaugh said last year, similar skill sets, Texas QBs, blah, blah, blah. If he hits his ceiling, you could make the argument, and again, that might just be from a standpoint of importance because he's the quarterback. I'm torn. You guys are right. It's Donovan or Loveland. I'm going to go Donovan, though, because I do think he's going to be that 1,500 plus scrimmage this year. I think he could be second or third in terms of receiving and be the leading rusher. I've been calling on that for a couple of years, so I'm hoping I'm going to be right one of these times. So, yeah, I'll go with Donovan. But, yeah, it feels like Donovan or Colston probably the pick. Defensive side of the ball. Just got 3 potential first-round picks over there. Maybe more if you want to throw Barham in that conversation as well. But, man, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
One of the edge guys potentially leading in sacks like we talked about.
Give me Jayshon Barham.
Whoa.
I'm going Barham.
Wow.
I'm going Barham.
I love it.
I didn't see that coming.
Nah, I mean, man, that's tough. I can't go. So here's my thinking. I can't go Will because I literally just said they won't throw him the ball. So,
but that means that's not a bad thing.
That also means something.
Right.
So
they called it Revis Island, man.
Yeah, it doesn't reflect on the overall stat sheet of times QB has not thrown you the ball.
Right.
But like it matters.
Non-target targets.
Right, exactly. No one that's not a recordable stat. So, people are going to look at that and be like, whoa, you didn't do anything. Well, you can't throw the ball. You can't do anything if you don't get thrown the ball. But I just think from a pure, what, Barham. I'm going with my gut, Barham.
I like it.
I'm gonna tee one up for you, Trevor, and give you the potential number 1 pick in the 2025 NFL draft because I'm going Will Johnson.
You think he's the potential number 1 pick?
No. I'm saying I'll give
you're
you
giving
Mason
me the
Graham.
number 1. Yeah, Mason.
I'm gonna tee Mason Graham up for you because I'm taking Will Johnson.
Yeah.
I think he'll have 6 interceptions this year. I really do, and I think he's going to be an absolute stud. That's what I put in my preseason predictions, and I'm going to stick with it. I think he'll be the defensive MVP. But I mean, as you guys have said, it could literally be 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, I could easily talk myself into Barham. I think Josh and I have probably heard from enough people. You keep telling me he's a stronger Devin Bush. Like,
yeah, right.
I feel bad because he can't reach the expectations I have now created in my head for him.
Yeah,
there's always the offseason hype train, and you take it with a grain of salt and blah, blah, blah. But, man, I don't remember the last guy that's been hyped like Barham to this level, to be honest. Will Johnson.
You could talk me into like 8 guys on that defense, and you'd have an argument for all of them.
Probably. God, Will's a really good pick. But, yeah, I think I think the best player on this defense is Mason Graham. If you're going to have an average depth of tackle that's a yard or less, you're making contact with the running back literally in the neutral zone on average. Oh, and you have the most QB hits as a defensive tackle. You generated only 2 less pressures than your sack getting weak side edge player as a sophomore. He is the gift from the football gods. I don't think there's a wrong answer, but the hype train and having Kenneth Grant next to him. Like, Kenneth Grant's probably the 3rd or 4th best defensive tackle in college football, and we hardly talk about him.
He was snubbed as a preseason All-American snub.
Yeah, because I think because they had Mason on there, they didn't want to put both of them.
Usually brings up a good point too. As with like 30 to 35 snaps a game, it's true.
Yeah.
That's not even a full workload.
Towards the end of the year, we brought that up last time. He was playing 25, 28 snaps a game.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
He's again, I'm bummed because I think everyone we just mentioned won't be back next year. But at least in the case of Mason, he's been playing since he was a freshman. A guy like Peppers and Gary who started late, got hurt, and left as a junior, you feel like you kind of got robbed. Where Mason, it's like, another full year. Okay. But I could easily go with Barmerwell though. Easily. These people, the people that don't know how good this defense is, it's crazy to me. Oh, they lost, blah, blah. Dude, this defense is loaded. If they find depth enough that they can rotate like they have in years past, it's the best one of this last 4 years. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about schedule and we'll make some win-loss predictions and such. I know. Look, obviously the non-conference has Texas on it. They're coming to the Big House September 7th, sandwiched between Fresno and Arkansas State. The 3 games Michigan is not expected to be favored in. Texas, Oregon coming into the Big House in November, and then, of course, going to Columbus, last game of the year, Thanksgiving weekend. We've argued those 3 games kind of define Michigan's season, whether they can steal 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But look, USC is not a bad team. They're coming to Michigan as well. I don't know. I look at Indiana, Kurt Spaghetti. That's a wild man over there.
You're putting it lightly. That is a loose cannon.
I'll tell you what, though. I mean, if he backs up his talk, man, they had a lot of transfers and reworking that roster. They'll be interesting. You go to Indiana after Oregon, 2 weeks before Ohio State. I don't know what to think about Jonathan Smith at MSU. That roster, I think it needs time. And obviously they're having some issues recruiting with some NIL stuff, but you always worry about a rivalry game. You've got the national championship rematch at Washington. That's other than Ohio State. That's their toughest road game, but that's another team, complete roster turnover. I obviously like Jed Fish a lot, but I don't know if that team's ready. You could make the argument. I'm not even gonna say you could. You should make this argument. In terms of getting into the playoff, Michigan would be better off losing one of those. If you go 9-3, I'd rather lose to USC and beat Oregon.
Yeah.
Because I'd have the better win at 9-3, right? So that's an interesting thing. But look, 9-3 is the number. 9 games they should win, 3 games they're probably going to be expected to lose. Are they going to lose those 3? Are they going to lose a game they shouldn't? Or are they going to win something where they're an underdog? Texas, Oregon, Ohio State.
I feel so wishy-washy about this whole thing because I've said all along I think Michigan's going 10-2. They're going to steal one of those 3 games. I just don't know which one of those games it's going to be. I'm leaning towards Texas right now because they don't have a running game at all right now because they've just been decimated by injuries. Going to Columbus again and beating them is going to be not an easy task. I mean, call it what it is. Ohio State is loaded.
Yeah.
I mean, they're loaded, but the quarterback situation is that's the big question. And obviously that being the last game of the year, you're going to have a good idea of what that quarterback situation looks like. So I'm not even prepared to call that a win or a loss yet. I don't know. I have a feeling that they're going to steal one of these games, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State. I'm leaning towards they're going to steal the Texas. I don't even know if I want to call it stealing. I think
that line's gonna get close. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a
I think that game is a lot more evenly matched than people are making it out to be. I think the big difference maker is that it's Quinn Ewers as quarterback. I mean, and let's be honest, even if it was Archie Manning, people would be all up in arms going, "Oh, Archie Manning, next best thing," So, or excuse me, Arch Manning, not Archie, Arch Manning. Sorry, I got that messed up. But, man, yeah, I'm having them going 10-2. I still think 9-3 is good, is still good for the playoff. I know people are making jokes, like they try to troll me and or just try to troll in general and go, "Oh, Michigan's going 9-3." Okay, well, they're gonna make the playoff with 9-3. So, that's too bad. So I just, man, yeah, like I think
so 10-2, but you're not going to commit to which one.
I can't commit to which one yet because I'm leaning towards a loss at Ohio State, but just because it's Columbus. If it was in Ann Arbor again, I'd maybe feel a little better just because that is the great equalizer and things. But I mean, Ohio State has some question marks too. So I don't think they're untouchable this year. They do deserve, I guess, the hype they're getting preseason just because of who they had return and who they added in the portal. But I think their quarterback is the big question mark, and that's going to be a question mark all year. And so, yeah, if Ohio State was earlier in the year, I'd probably lean towards being, that as the win that Michigan steals. But yeah, give me 10-2. Yeah, I think a lot of things got to go right for Michigan this year in order to run the table again. A lot of things got to go right. I mean, it's we're talking like magical. I think Michigan, don't get me wrong, they have the goods to do it. They have the talent to do it. But I mean, I think Orji would have to play at another level in order to get that to be that plateau of undefeated. And it can happen, but it could also not happen. It's just kind of where we're at right now. There's a lot of unknowns. So, yeah, give me 10-2.
Yeah, I think when we first brought up this topic, I saw a lot of people saying 12-0. I don't know if that was a joke, but I think if you have Michigan going 12-0 this season, I think you need to take off the maize and blue glasses because that's going to be a real challenge for this team. It's a very talented team, but this is the toughest schedule Michigan has played in a long time.
Yep.
And you've got 3 preseason top 10 teams, top 5 teams, 2, 3, and 4. They're on the schedule, and you're gonna have to play those guys. And Michigan, especially last year, Michigan didn't really have anything until Penn State, and then Ohio State came to Ann Arbor. But 12-0 is a stretch. I kind of disagree with Josh a little bit in the sense that I think if Michigan goes 9-3, I think they're out. Because if you lose to Texas and lose to Oregon and lose to Ohio State, what win does Michigan have to point at as
USC and Washington are going to be your best wins?
And I don't think either of those teams are going to be really any good. I think you could see both those teams go 6-6. And
USC's got a tough schedule too.
Yeah. And Washington's going to be significantly worse than they were last year. But if Michigan at the end of the season is 9-3, I think they're going to be sweating it out pretty hard there at the end with no big win to point at. And I guess it'll have to we'll have to see how big those losses are in this hypothetical situation if they lose to Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. But I personally have them at 10-2. And I do agree with Josh that they're going to steal one of those 3 games. I wouldn't call Texas a steal. I do think they're going to beat Texas.
Just in terms of,
right. They're going to win, I think, one of those 3 big games, and it's going to be Texas, in my opinion, just based on everything Josh said, the running back situation there. It's they might have to play a walk on. I think I read somewhere they
converted a running back.
Converted a wide receiver over to running back. Yeah.
Converted a wide receiver running back. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I just don't think Texas has what it takes to go into the big house and get a win. But I could see Michigan beating Oregon. I've got that as a close game. Oregon, I think, might struggle playing in the cold weather there in early November in Ann Arbor. But yeah, I can't predict Michigan to beat Ohio State this year. The Buckeyes are too loaded, and I know everyone talks about quarterback, but that's one of the most talented rosters in the country. And I don't know if Michigan's going to have what it takes to knock them off and work with the crowd and everything like that. So I've got them at 10-2, and I think they'll make the playoff, and I think that'll be a successful season. I think they'll lose in the quarterfinal. They sneak in at, I don't know, 8 or 9, whatever it might be. And at that point, you're going on the road for the first round. They might win that, but then get knocked out in the quarterfinal.
Hot takes incoming, boys.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I've long thought they were going to win that Texas game. I think Texas coming up north, and I know it's in September, but them coming up north in the big house, losing their elite defensive tackle duo, bringing in new wide receivers. Look, Quinn Ewers is really good, but I think against this secondary and this pass rush, they're going to get a couple picks against them. And I think the way to beat Michigan is being able to run the ball. We've seen that. Kenneth Walker, right? And them losing that. I think Michigan's going to win that game. And I think that winning that game, we've talked about how instrumental that could be for their season, could put them on a rocket ship, where I think if you lose to Texas, you're more likely to lose a game you shouldn't, like a USC or a Washington. If you win that game, I think you get through your schedule. I love that Oregon's coming to Ann Arbor in November, and maybe the weather's bad enough that really gets Michigan in there. I think Oregon and Georgia are my top 2 teams in college football this year. So for a Pac-12 team to have that explosive offense, but also a really good defense, I mean, that's the difference between them and the other 3 teams coming over. They have a good defense. Look, the part they're not understanding is in the Big Ten, the battles are in the trenches every week. Even the bad teams have good offensive linemen, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have to win that. I think I just can't pick Michigan to beat Oregon right now. I do like, again, that it's in the winter and in Ann Arbor. But I can pick Michigan to beat Ohio State. Brock, you were talking about how loaded this team is. Is this better than when Michigan went to Columbus in 2022? The team they have this year?
I think they're better.
I disagree completely.
Really?
CJ Stroud is already a top 5 to 7 quarterback in the NFL. He's one of the best college quarterbacks I've ever seen. The wide receivers that they had, whether you want to go back to Olave and Garrett Wilson and JSN and Marvin Harrison, is Emeka Ibuka going to turn the light on and go from wide receiver 2 to 3 and be the number 1 guy? Because if not, they're relying on a freshman. And I know it's happened multiple years. They've had elite first-round picks at wide receiver. Jeremiah Smith is probably going to be really good. Carnell Tate is probably going to be really good. Are they better than the receiving cores Michigan has already beaten in the past? No. Is that offensive line better? Do I like Josh Simmons at left tackle? Do I love that your center is the guy from Alabama who can snap the ball and has to go up against Mason Graham and Kenneth Graham and Will Howard? Look, Michigan has QB questions too. Is Will Howard better than Alex Orji, or should have a better year than Alex Orji? Yes. Let's be honest. Will Howard's ceiling is Heisman. It's so funny. He could get benched or he could win a Heisman this year. That's literally how the betting odds are lining up. He's not better than CJ Stroud. I don't think he's better than Kyle McCord.
I'll give you Kyle McCord for sure. Yeah.
Second year Kyle McCord would have been better.
Yeah.
And even if he's equal, okay. Are you going to commit to running the ball? I think they're going to try. You go and get Chip Kelly. Okay. Is Travion Henderson going to stay healthy this year? Is Judkins not going to be a locker room cancer when Ole Miss wasn't mad that he left? Right? Like I think things could go right, and Ohio State is absolutely a national championship contender. They could win the Natty and make me look really stupid. I think that absolutely is a potential scenario. The defense is going to be really, really good. Okay. Are JTT and Jack Sawyer going to become the duo that everybody said they were going to be when they play Penn State? Right. But are they going to go to this ungodly level now? They lost Michael Hall. I mean, Ty Hamilton's good. You've got Williams back, right? 2 new linebackers, Sonny Styles. You know, they're hyping him up like crazy. Denzel Burke's a really good corner. But hey, safety. Rantham, you remember him? You know what I mean? Like, of all the years that Michigan and Ohio State have played, the last 3, it's hardest this year to pick Michigan to win. I get it. I'm not worried about going to Columbus, and I have a lot of questions about their offense. And I think if Michigan should be expected to lose that game. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, it's an on paper thing.
Absolutely agree.
On paper thing,
but I think that they have, again, convinced themselves it's not because Michigan thought about them 24/7, 365 in a genuine way. It's not because Michigan was tougher. It's not because Michigan fought through the last 60 minutes and because they were a closer brotherhood and overcame Zinter injuries and overcame Will Johnson getting hurt. And it's not because they ran the ball down their throat and they believe they could win. It's not that. It's a few big plays. It's one bad half. It's bad weather. And it's Connor frickin' Stallions. Yeah. They haven't flipped the switch like Michigan did in 2021. This rivalry is completely 180 back to the way Urban Meyer used to talk about this program. And if Michigan comes into Columbus 10-1 and not 8-3 or whatever, and they're not bad like they just assumed they were going to be this year, I think Ohio State will be nervous, and that'll play into Michigan's hand. So,
well, the pressure is all on Ohio State.
Michigan's got house money, dude. 100%.
Yes, yeah. Michigan is just riding high right now.
And the Chip Kelly thing, the dude just didn't want to do his job at UCLA anymore.
Yeah.
And Ryan Day not being the play caller with Chip when he wouldn't give up the play calling to Hartline, who was named OC basically de facto to give him a raise and keep him. And then you bring in Kelly. I just think there's a lot of weird dynamics there. And look at when Kelly and Day have been together. What have they weren't particularly great. Boston College, was it Philly? Right. Again, they could easily, they're up there. It's Georgia, Oregon, and Ohio State are the top 3 national championship contenders. I don't know. I'm going to pick Michigan to win that game right now. I got them going 11-1, which means they're probably playing for a Big Ten championship, probably against Oregon again. And if you've got a rematch, the favor goes to the team that lost. You know, I think they're going to compete for. Look, 9-3 is the more likely scenario. If they beat Texas, I think the season changes, and that's what I sent in for our little collective thing. I said 11-1. I got them beating Texas and OSU this year.
Yeah, it's just I mean, a lot of questions at quarterback for Michigan got to be answered too, and
100%.
That's the big thing. It's easy for us to sit here and predict records and stuff, but yeah, they gotta. I mean, a lot. Again, all of it depends on the quarterback. I mean, if Orji is absolutely lights out another level, then yeah, Michigan can absolutely run the table. Like,
does he have to be?
Well, that's the thing. Like,
they went undefeated with Cade no, not undefeated because they lost to MSU. But 11-1 and with Cade McNamara, and that
McNamara was efficient, didn't turn the ball over much.
Right.
So, and that's the big thing with Orji is that everyone talks about his completion percentage and stuff, and we've heard that his accuracy he's had his days where it's not as good as like Tuttle and Warren.
Yeah, if Orji's turning the ball over 8-4s in the conversation,
that's the thing. So, Yeah, I mean, it's not. He's not going to be JJ. I mean, JJ was on another level. I mean, you can call JJ elite. I mean, he was elite.
Yeah.
He's an elite. Whatever you want to call him, an elite game manager. That's fine. Look where he's at. Look where he's at right now. That's a first round game manager right there. So I just think
I think the difference for JJ though was what he did on 3rd and long and extending plays. And Orji needs to add something similar to that. And I'm assuming that's going to be with his legs. I think a lot of my confidence too comes from this defense. I do think this will be the best defense Michigan's had.
That's the great equalizer too. I don't care what Orji's completion percentage is. I don't care if he's dead 50%. If he's not turning the ball over in that other 50%, then I don't really care because
he's scoring touchdowns in the red zone.
Right. That's that too.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like by all accounts they have another kicker that they can rely on. So that's another.
There's going to be a game he wins for them or loses for him this year.
Right.
That's a good point.
Special teams matters too. So obviously it's not dead stop. This relies on Orji, but Alex Orji can absolutely take this team to another level with his play or can take it down a level with his play.
Yep. Fair.
So it's just, it's still, there's a long way to go between now and Ohio State. And there's so many question marks that still need to be answered. I guess the good thing about all of this is that week 3 gives you that early test of kind of not necessarily the ultimate measuring stick, but it gives you a pretty decent view of where things could be trending.
And look, between that not being a conference game and with the expanded playoff, you can lose to Texas and that game mean absolutely nothing. And I would argue we've seen in other scenarios, we've talked about this. You lose to Texas by 10 or less points. That's just as good as beating a nobody.
Yeah.
Yep.
The way the committee look
you got to factor in the brand of Michigan as well, and the
in terms of getting in the CFP,
money that they can bring in for a playoff too. So
if they're 9-3 and they can be shoehorned into that playoff, it's happening.
Oh, there's gonna happen. Absolutely, it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
it's all about the money now.
Yep.
So Brock, you've got CFP berth, but out first round.
I think they'll win a game. I think they'll get in as they'll win their first round game, whether it's home or away, I think, and then they'll lose in the quarterfinals.
So Josh, you're going with 10-2. You don't know which game.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of with Brock. I think they'll win a game too and lose. That's kind of where I'm at.
If I go with my ultimate high pick, the 11-1, and then again, I'm dreaming of a world where they get that 5th seed. I think that is such a gift to play the 12, which is either going to be the G5 conference champ or the worst SEC team that gets in or whatever. And then your reward is playing the Big 12 or ACC champ, the 4 seed in the next round. And I have a home playoff game. You're back in the semifinals potentially with that path. I do think they would find a way to back in at 9-3. Again, I'd rather lose to a USC and beat one of the top 3 just from a resume builder standpoint. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle a 10-2 Big 12 team versus a 9-3 Big 10 team. I mean, we've already heard the Big 10 and the SEC are talking about in the next round of negotiations. They want 3 automatic teams because they're saying, look, 11-1 in the ACC is not the same thing as our conference, right? So it'll be interesting to see how the committee handles that. But yeah, I think beating Texas and sky's the limit. And I think Orji's going to be good, and I don't think he has to be unbelievable.
I don't think he has to. No, I let me be clear. I don't think he has to be unbelievable too. But if you want to, without a doubt, a team that, can run the table without a doubt, I think if he can take it to that next level, then you're obviously better off in the long run.
I've gotten more confident too because Sharon Moore's happy with this offensive line.
Yes.
That was a big question mark for me, especially with a new quarterback. He's happy with this offensive line. And is it going to be Joe Moore award winner? I don't know. We've already proven it doesn't need to be. right? When it, again, this isn't the same as the Natty team, but there's just so much elite talent on defense, and Loveland and Dono and the playmakers that are there. So it's wild though, because literally, I think 8-4 is the floor. I don't think it'd be 7-5.
Oh, the wheels would really have to fall off for that.
That's a bad situation.
That is a bad year.
The defense is too good for Michigan to go 7-5. I think I don't think that's conceivable.
So I said 11-1. I think that's my best case scenario. I can't imagine, even if everything goes right, either you're losing to Oregon or Ohio State or even Texas. Going undefeated seems wild to me.
I know I said that earlier. I said 12-0 is very far-fetched, but I do think that's the ceiling. I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, there is absolutely a
Let me rephrase this. More likely 7-5, 8-4, or 12-0.
Jeez.
I think they're more likely 8-4 than 12-0.
I think so too.
Winning those 3 games is hard enough, right? And again, USC is not. I agree with you. I think they're probably like another 7-5, 8-4 type year, but that's still a good team. And we've talked about, like, you face tests every week, and you've got a target on your back. You're going to get the best of every opponent you face, and so man, that would be. I'd take it, but I don't see it. But yeah, I've talked myself into 11-1 because it feels like Orji's going to win the job, not by default. It feels like the O-line's in a good spot. It feels like they're finding depth at the places they need to, and they're just so many elite players on defense, especially. So,
yeah. I know people are bringing up, like, did it seem? I know I'm not calling out Frank specifically. I just know that he mentioned it. Like, did it seem wild the last 2 years? I think the scenario with Michigan the last 2 years is a lot different. Michigan had a known commodity at quarterback the last 2 years.
Right.
I mean, JJ is your game changer for you. Orji doesn't have to be JJ, obviously, because they're not the same type of player. But, you have a 5-star quarterback. You have a guy who's won at every level that he's played.
The best running back in Michigan football history.
The best running back in Michigan football history. Loaded at wide receiver. Loaded at multiple levels on defense. And yeah, they're going to be very busy again this year on defense.
There's more elite players on defense this year, but unless 5 or 6 guys hit, there's not as much depth.
Like the last 2 years, I think there's more known commodities on this team compared to this year. But again, it doesn't. He wasn't known, but I know Frankie, he wasn't known in 22, but but
he was he was a 5-star quarterback.
He came in and was throwing darts.
If Alex Orji had thrown a pass like JJ did against Western, we'd be a lot more excited about Alex Orji this year.
If he, the difference right now between JJ and Orji is that, we're talking about JJ. We never talked about, Michigan is going to could be 8-5 or 8-4 and 7 and whatever with JJ. We're talking about this team's pretty, JJ can take this team to the next level with what they had. He walked into a pretty decently established team and he took it to the next level. The thing with Orji is that he could take this team to the next level, or he could absolutely stink and the wheels fall off. It's just, I just think there's way more of an unknown with Orji than you had with ever had with JJ. I mean, the hype with JJ started the second he got on the field. Yeah. I mean, and I know you listen. They've done it with McNamara, and I made this point on the message boards a couple of days ago. You don't have to be spectacular if you've done it with McNamara. Yeah. But that's the point. You have to take care of the ball. You have to be somewhat accurate. That's kind of the thing. That's the big question is we don't know if Orji can take care of the ball. We don't know if, he can lead you down the field. And logic says, he's capable of that. And I'm not saying that he's absolutely not going to do this, but we just have not seen it. We haven't seen it, so there's nothing to.
Well, like he
reference.
brought up Orji's running ability, adding a new dimension. I agree.
I agree.
I have more faith in Orji and less faith in the staff actually letting him do it.
That's the thing. Yeah.
When JJ had RPO last year, I don't think he actually had license to keep the ball. You know what I mean? It just didn't. Yeah. It wasn't until the end. Now Orji's a much bigger, stronger dude. You know, you didn't want JJ to get hurt, but
yeah, I just think they were so afraid of JJ getting hurt, and rightfully so.
Yeah,
because the drop off from JJ and everyone else was so large, and it kind of makes me think. To look back, you know, his meniscus issue that he had this year kind of makes me think it almost like it was. No, I'm talking about JJ.
I know. I know where you're going with it.
It was probably went back to this year, last season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not trying to call anyone out here. I'm just kind of trying to be the.
No, we like the conversation.
Yeah,
I think people have really high hopes for Orji,
and that's okay. And
I'm in that camp. I remember you and I when we did the Maize versus Blue spring game draft, not this past spring, but the year before. I took Orji and I said, look, I think he's starting next year. Right. So I get that. Did he grown man? Yes, I did.
He thinks I was trying to jinx an injury, but I wasn't going that.
I didn't think you were trying to jinx an injury. I think you were trying to say that JJ was hurt last year and his injury has probably been lingering already.
He was hurt with Maryland, so he was hurt in the Maryland game.
Knee bruise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that we won't know obviously until these games are played. I mean, it's one thing to do it in camp and in practice, but to do it in game is a whole different thing, and we just haven't seen it yet.
I was just being a smart ass, Jesus. I didn't think you were actually going to get anyone in trouble.
Yeah, I'm going to hear from the Vikings.
The Vikings. He was hurt last year. We had no idea.
Yeah. Nah, it looks fine. JJ will have a very healthy, good career in Minnesota, but
it does suck though. I feel like he was pushing for the start.
He would have been playing at some point, whether it was week 1 or halfway through the season. He would have played. That is a bummer, but it's just for me. I'm stuck on the unknown factor of it.
It's fair,
and because you don't know what you're gonna get. You know, and it's not like a box. It's not Trevor. It's not like a box of chocolates. In this
time out. Brock, have you seen Forrest Gump?
No,
I haven't. No.
Nope, knew it.
Knew it. I haven't.
Knew it.
I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't seen it. Maybe I'll make that I'll put that on my list, and I'll make that my goal to watch that one.
Right. And the thing is, I'm not hoping. And the thing is here, I'm trying to make it clear because I know someone's probably going to misconstrue my words. I'm not hoping for Michigan to fail. I'm not hoping for Orji to suck. I'm just saying, like, there's just so much unknowns that it makes it hard for me to have a definitive opinion about anything because there's just a lot can go right or a lot could go wrong. I think there's more out there, more tangible evidence for Michigan to go right with Michigan than to go wrong. But we've seen decent teams with underwhelming quarterback play not live up to expectations before.
Yeah.
So, you know,
there's a lot of other positions I'd rather have question marks at.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. But, you know, you just have to hope that the coaching staff can put these guys in the best, you know, positions to be successful. And, you know, a whole new staff, obviously I get that, but you know, again, evidence suggests that they will, but we have to see it. And that's just what it comes down to. You're just going to have to wait and see.
Any final thoughts, Brock?
I don't think I have anything else. You guys nailed it. I'm excited. People are gonna, you know, have their own opinions about what happens in 2 weeks on the field. But I'm just excited to watch some football and see how this team looks, and you know, then we can start forming some opinions about what's going to happen throughout the rest of the year.
I'm going to be really interested in terms of fan base vibes, reactions, whatever, in terms of what happens in that Texas game.
Yeah.
If they win, how quickly is this fan base back on, dude, we're natty contenders, we're beating Oregon, we're beating Ohio State, right?
Oh,
Like
immediately.
that buy-in's flipping.
Yeah,
immediately,
immediately.
right?
And then that's not to fault them at all. I mean, I don't blame them in
Yeah.
that case. I mean, that you're talking about top 5. Well, Michigan's not top 5, but like that's a top 5 matchup realistically.
Well, it's a top 5 win, and they're probably in a top 5 ranked after, right? But
yeah,
and yeah, okay, yeah, they're contenders, but I mean, like,
yeah,
to
obviously.
another, like,
No, I knew what you meant. I think,
yeah.
No, I knew what you meant. They are yes, they're contenders. Of course they are.
There's tiers, and like I said, I think Georgia, Oregon, and Ohio State are probably in their own tier right now, and then Bama, Texas, somewhere in there, and then Michigan's right there with a Notre Dame or somebody like that. But on the opposite side, though, a loss, and has the Natty bought grace at all? Michigan hasn't lost at home since what?
Yeah.
Ohio State 19? Well, no,
Yeah.
the 2020 season.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I always forget about that.
Yeah. A lot of people would like to forget it.
It doesn't even feel like a real season, obviously.
No.
And you had guys opting out. Look, I think it mattered. I don't want to get into that debate again. But anyway,
Yeah.
a lot. Is this fan base willing to give more a year? Are they okay with a 9-3? Or,
I think it depends.
Hey, we got the Natty.
I think it depends on how they lose.
Yeah.
And a loss is a loss, obviously. I mean, there's no like sugarcoating a loss, but if Michigan goes in there and loses 45-3, then yeah, people are going to freak out a little bit. I think it depends like how if they were to lose those 3 big games, is kind of how, I mean, there's no like the Ohio State game is by itself. That's a whole bubble. I mean, you expect to win that game every year. So there's no like, oh, we lost to Ohio State by 2 points. No, that doesn't matter. I think how they lose those.
There's no oh my God, I can't think of the term. Moral victories.
There's
no moral victories anymore. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And there are no, even with the other games, there's no moral victories. But again, if Michigan goes into Texas and loses, or goes into the Texas game and loses like 27-24, then people might be willing to give it a little more grace. Just because it's in the beginning of the year. And even in the Oregon game, people are going to probably justify that going, oh, they're a top 5 team. So I think it all depends on how they lose. If they're like dropping these games by just massive margins and look really bad doing it, then yeah, I think the concern factor goes up. But yeah, I mean, it all depends on what they look like doing it. I mean, yeah, there's no justifying a loss, but there is to a certain extent in this modern playoff era now where there's 12 teams.
That's the point. We have to start looking at this like the NFL.
Yeah.
And getting in the playoff and a regular, because it used to be a regular season loss could end your season week 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
So no, I think how they lose is a big piece of it, because when you look at these eras, prior to 21, Michigan couldn't put teams away.
Yes.
They just could not. They couldn't put games away. They couldn't win the games when they were underdogs. They were shooting themselves in the foot. The Ohio State game in 16, we talk about the penalties and the bad turnovers in the red zone, and Pepper's missing the tackle on the 3rd and long that has set up the JT with short play, right? And that's been the difference, is least penalized team in college football. 4th quarter, they're grinding out victories. They're the tougher team, right? They're putting teams away. It's just been very different. So if they start losing games because they're the ones making the dumb mistakes and getting the penalties or turning over the ball in opportune times, like the Cade interception, Ohio State 2021.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, here we go again, so, and then obviously they were able to overcome that. So we'll see. JT was short. I will say, you win every game at Ohio State, though, you get some respect. And he is a very I met him at the game last year. Classy dude.
Yeah.
So
I want to respond to Rashad's comment here too. I mean, I agree. These guys they absolutely deserve to win the benefit of the doubt, but not everyone is like us with that line of thinking. I mean, some people will lose one game and it's the absolute end of the world, or even last year. Remember last year where after the East Carolina game, everyone was talking about the running game, and you and I were sitting here, all three of us were sitting here going like, guys, relax. They'll be fine.
We talked about the running game for most of the season.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, there is that line of thinking, like, yeah, they've won a lot. But
talked about the running game and not a bunch of Keith Thamel stuff.
Don't give enough. Yeah, those are the days. Not everyone kind of gives them that level of grace. I mean, yeah.
Well, I'm the one saying I think 11-1, and I'm still trying to say, look, there's a realistic angle here where if it was any other team that had 5 new starters on the offensive line because 6 left, the leading receiver returning other than the tight end had 200 yards last year, your best running back just left. In those scenarios, it'd be hard to be like, oh yeah, I know they won the Natty. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's why, Josh, you're being a little bit more skeptical just because of that unknown element. I'm giving more of that benefit of the doubt, and a lot of that has to do with how good I think the defense is going to be. But anyway, cool. All right, so going to be a busy week. This is a big week of fall camp because we're moving into game week prep the following week. So I think we're going to have a lot of things figured out, if you want to put it that way. Josh will continue to post his camp intel. So make sure, if you're not a subscriber already, head over to michigan.rivals.com, sign up and join us. Follow our Twitters. We may have an announcement tomorrow that if you're not a subscriber already, could be interesting to you, but you're going to want to make sure you follow along. Premium content's obviously going to start to pick up when the season goes, but yeah, obviously a lot of camp intel coming this week. And then our next show, we're going to be talking about a football game. We're going to be previewing Michigan, Fresno State. The season is actually starting. It's weird because we've talked about this. It did go really fast though.
Yeah, it did.
So yeah. All right. As always, guys, thank you. The viewership has been loyal and consistent throughout this episode. A lot of you folks have been here the entire time. We appreciate your input in the comment section, being a part of the conversation. That's the point of this show, the goal of this show. If you're listening back on podcast streams or watching it back on YouTube, appreciate you as well. But we'd love to have you join us live and be a part of the conversation as well. Ideally, every Sunday, live at 7. Hail to the podcast. Make sure you're liking, subscribing so you can get that notification bell. Otherwise, we will see you in a week as we talk about a Michigan football game, upcoming kickoff 2024 season. This has been Hail to the podcast.